Sometimes AI is better at changing our minds than another person is, because research was done on conspiracy theorists, right? So people are very invested in what they believe, and they would say to the AI what they're thinking, but they're much more honest with the AI than they would be with another person about their thought processes and what they believe. And actually getting the AI to question that made them question their own thinking much more than if a person was having that conversation with them.
Welcome to Future Fit Leadership, a podcast for leaders at every stage who want to stay relevant in a world that keeps changing. Leadership has shifted. The pace is faster, the expectations are higher, and the future is calling for a different kind of leader. One who is human-centered, grounded, and able to balance capability with empathy. These conversations bring together global perspectives on the skills and mindsets that help people and organizations thrive. Hello and welcome to Future Fit Leadership. I hope wherever you are listening to this podcast, you are well. Bethan Winn brings a rare combination of academic depth, practical insight, and lived experience to the conversation about critical thinking. Born and raised in a small Welsh town surrounded by language, community, and the arts, she grew up with an appreciation for curiosity and dialogue long before she knew those skills would form the foundation of her career. Her path to Australia began with a simple decision to seek a different life. What was meant to be a one-year adventure turned into 15 years of building a new home, a new community, and a professional identity. Bethan moved from teaching in London to working in higher education here in Australia, but it was a personal health scare in 2019 that prompted her to rethink everything. That week between finding a lump and receiving the all-clear call became a turning point. It pushed her to reassess how she wanted to spend her time and the impact she wanted to have. Since then, she has become an educator, speaker, and advisor known for her work on helping people think more clearly, more courageously, and with greater awareness of the biases and shortcuts that naturally shape our decisions. Her book, The Human Edge: Critical Thinking in the Age of AI, has resonated with leaders, educators, parents, and teams because it focuses on something we all need right now. At a time when information is everywhere and AI is reshaping the way we learn, work, and decide, Bethan brings us back to the human skills that sit at the heart of good judgment, curiosity, humility, and the willingness to question our own thinking. Her work is grounded, accessible, and practical. She understands the realities leaders face, especially as AI becomes embedded in our daily workflow. And she reminds us that while technology can inform our decisions, it cannot replace the wisdom and the experience that comes from reflection and human connection. Today, we have the opportunity to hear Bethan's perspective on what it means to think well, lead well, and navigate a world where the balance between human judgment and artificial intelligence is still being defined. Please enjoy this conversation with Bethan Winn. Hello, Bethan. Welcome to Future Fit Leadership. How are you today?
I'm great, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to have this conversation. I was doing some research and you was like, oh, this is going to be a very interesting conversation. But let's start with, because you're from Wales. You're not from Australia, you're from Wales, and people might pick that up in your accent, although your accent isn't very heavy. It's maybe the Welsh. Yeah. What was life growing up like in Wales, and what made you come to Australia?
Oh gosh. So what's life like there? I suppose much like anywhere where it's a small town, community was really important. Welsh, I was part of the Welsh language community, so that's a bit different for a lot of people. Lots of people don't realise that Welsh is its own language, very different from English. So yeah, being in the choir, going to chapel, going to school and all that stuff like anyone else would be doing, I suppose. But yeah, I'd say like the sense of community in the small town where I grew up was really important. And my dad used to drag us out for hikes at the weekend up into Snowdonia. So some listeners might know Snowdonia National Park, where Snowdon is the highest peak in England and Wales. So, getting dragged out as a teenager, you're like, oh, this is the worst thing ever. And it seems funny to me now that as an adult, I realize how important nature is and now drag my kids out for walks on weekends.
Good on you.
They're a bit more enthusiastic than I was.
And then what made you come out to Australia?
Well, I was teaching in London in my mid-20s and was quite burnt out and just kind of thought there's got to be more to life than just working 6 days a week and feeling very poor all the time. So we just came on a whim for my husband got offered a job over here and we brought a rucksack each and we thought we'll go for a year and we've ended up staying. So it's 15 years just gone since we moved out here, which absolutely blows my mind. I can't get my head around it's in that
I
long.
love that. You came out with a rucksack and then ended up in a house, never went back.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, you often refer to a Welsh word, and I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong, but it's spelt Dysgu. Is it, how do you pronounce it? I'm not even going to try it. How do you pronounce it?
It's like dusky. So almost like when the sun goes down, dusk, like dusky.
Right.
And yes, it's the verb which means to teach and the verb which means to learn. So I really love this. And I talk about this often when I'm doing any kind of learning experience, whether it's a big talk or a small group workshop, is inviting people to talk to someone, to teach someone what they've learned from the day, so it helps them embed the learning. And obviously when you're going to teach someone else, it forces you to learn it better yourself. So I'm a big fan of just having those conversations, that dialogic learning that can happen after a session or a podcast listen or book read or whatever it might be.
Now, talking about books, you've written a book yourself. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, it's called The Human Edge, Critical Thinking in the Age of AI. For those watching the video, there's a big, massive book behind me on the wall. It is about 8 conversations you can have with another human or with a large language model, if you can't find a human to be subject to your conversations, to develop the skills to improve your critical thinking. So, it might be evaluation, decision making, communication, lots of different things that kind of overlap to create critical thinking.
And when did you release it?
It came out in August. So I had a sort of friends and family launch, and then the Institute of Management here in WA hosted a launch in October. It's now Maggie Dent's book of the month
for November. Fantastic. Congratulations.
For December it would be. Yeah. So that's been very exciting, because what I'm really enjoying about putting something out into the world, that, writing a book, you kind of lock yourself away and work on this thing, and you have a couple of people advising you, but once you put it out, people make of it what they want to. And I think because conversations are in all parts of our lives, I've had teachers say this is great for students, I've had leaders say this is great for my team, I've had parents say I want to do this with my kids. Like it's accessible on lots of different levels, and because critical thinking is transferable, lots of different audiences are really kind of owning it and enjoying it for themselves, which is really lovely and exciting to see.
I'm interested to know what critical thinking is to you, because I think it's I'm not saying it's a buzzword, but it's kind of like we're using it a lot at the moment. But what is it like when you strip it right back? What do you believe critical thinking is?
So there's a couple of really simple explanations, which is it's how to think, not what to think. So it's, thinking about your thinking, or careful thinking is another nice way to explain it to a really young audience. It's like very careful thinking. On a deeper level, because I wouldn't get paid to show up and say, oh, just think more carefully, it's skills, it's knowledge, and it's attitude. So skills like analysis, evaluation, judgment, which I think everybody's very capable of doing. But when we're busy, when we're stressed, we forget to take the time to think things through properly. Knowledge of things like fallacies, logical fallacies, biases, how arguments are structured can be incredibly helpful to understand, how your brain works and what influences your thinking. And then attitudes like curiosity, humility, and courage, that willingness to be open, to admit I might be wrong here, or I need to update my beliefs, or I don't know, can you enlighten me? And that takes a lot of courage to do that. So that's probably, in writing the book, I realized that's probably the most important thing, is to be brave with it, which you might not typically sort of put together, bravery and critical thinking, but to do it well, you have to just be open and allow other people to share their ideas with you, and be open to the idea that you might be wrong, because we're all a bit right and we're all a bit wrong all the time, which is quite an uncomfortable truth to live with sometimes.
You know, it's interesting because critical thinking isn't a skill set that we all naturally have. So in your experience, particularly for leaders in this space, and at a time when there's so much change happening and critical thinking is really, I think, a requirement for a future fit leader. It's something that a lot of our guests talk about. How do you grow or strengthen that muscle for yourself?
You definitely can get better at it. I think if you think about it, part of it is that knowledge. So understanding, if we take cognitive biases, for example, I often share a few in a workshop, have a few matching cards, and people kind of go, oh, yeah. So just that awareness of how your brain works or how you're thinking already is a good first step with anything, right? It's just giving you some language around it, some knowledge and understanding. And then particularly if someone's getting started, giving them some frameworks. And that's often what we will do in a session. Give some frameworks, like I have a decision-making framework, point framework, where we go permission, zoom out, zoom in, noise, like noise in your head, noise out there, and then test and take action. And so when people have that and we've gone through it, then they have a shared language to do it together. Because when we're thinking by ourselves, it's very easy to persuade yourself that you're right. You just go, oh yeah, I'm so clever. What a great thinker I am. Whereas it's when you put your ideas out into the world and you test them with other people that you start to improve and see where the gaps are, or where you might be, misinterpreting. And I think, sometimes a problem can be that we tend to keep it to ourselves, or in the workplace, people just nod and smile if you're the senior leader. And that's why having a sounding board, whether it's a human or an AI, to bounce ideas and tell the AI to tell you that you're where you might be wrong, not the kind of cheerleader AI that you might automatically get, where it's like, oh, you're so clever. But having that dialogue to test your thinking is really, really valuable.
It's interesting that you're bringing in the AI piece to test your critical thinking to see whether it's, you're on the right path or not. I guess the challenge I have with that is AI doesn't have the empathy or the emotions around it, which would be quite critical in this arena. How do you balance that out if AI is your partner in making sure that your critical thinking is right?
Oh, okay. So obviously the prompts that you give are really crucial, and having clarity of what you want from it. I hear what you're saying. Everyone's kind of scared about, oh, AI is going to make us stupid, but we have so much agency in this. A lot of people are like, oh my God, AI is going to suck my brains out or something. It's like, well, no, not, it depends how you use it. And obviously you don't have to use it. I'm big on like trying it for a bit and then also using people still, because I think there's so much value in that. You're right, it doesn't have the emotional kind of investment that someone else would. What's interesting, I'll have to find the study to share with you after, but sometimes AI is better at changing our minds than another person is, because research was done on conspiracy theorists, right? So people are very invested in what they believe, and they would say to the AI what they're thinking, but they're much more honest with the AI than they would be with another person about their thought processes and what they believe. And actually getting the AI to question that made them question their own thinking much more than if a person was having that conversation with them. So there's this interesting thing. And I think this is why, a lot of people say they like using it as a therapist, is because you're not giving all your secrets to another human that you're worried about being judged by. You can just say whatever, give your deepest, darkest thoughts, and you don't have to worry about what does that human think of me. It's more just having that back and forth and being really frank. So I think that's very interesting to see how, as humans, we're behaving with AI.
Do you think AI has the capacity to disagree with you?
Oh, yes. Yeah. It can do. Again, it depends on how you've set it up. So I would say for most people using, for example, ChatGPT, just straight out the box, as it were, it will just tell you you're great. And I'm sure we've all had that experience. But if you say to it, giving it a character, so almost getting AI to role play is a really smart way of doing this. So say, I would like you to behave like a senior academic in critical thinking at University of Western Australia. I want you to pick apart my thinking on this. Like, instructing it to do that is going to give you some very different results than just, whatever's the first thing that says. And again, it's that dialogue, and it's that you can shape the kind of character AI is playing for you. And you don't have to listen to it at all, but it's and that's great, right? That's one of the bonuses, is it doesn't have feelings, so you can reject or accept suggestions willy-nilly without thinking about, oh, sorry, did you hurt your feelings there?
One of the things that you talk about and write about is that how AI has entered our lives and reshaped our thinking without us noticing that it is. What are some of the subtle shifts that are happening that maybe we need to be more aware of?
Oh, well, I suppose, when someone says to me, oh, I don't use AI, I'm like, well, you're probably using it whether you want to or not. So it is embedded in, like the supermarket checkouts and your internet banking and all of these different areas. I suppose something that's very relatable is the note taking in meetings. So I was doing a live thing yesterday to a company in London, and everyone joined on Google Meets, Google Hangouts, whichever one it is. And every single person's note taker was like offering to hop in, and Barry that was hosting was like, go away, didn't want that, because I think when you've got something taking notes for you, you kind of go, oh yeah, Otter or Google or whoever is making notes for me. I don't need to sort of listen in the same way, and I don't need to make my own notes. And what I found, actually, because it's very easy to fall into that trap, is that if I wasn't writing things down, like I've always got my pen and paper here, then I don't process it in the same way. And that's particularly, going around lots of different organizations and businesses, and needing to really understand people's problems and challenges in order to help them very quickly. You need to be fully focused and fully processing that. So while people are like, oh, it's fine, AI is taking notes, I'm like, well, you're not processing things in the same way if you've kind of cognitively offloaded onto an AI. And if you're doing it properly, then you have to go back and listen to the notes, which is actually not as efficient at all anyway. So I think it's just worth checking in with your brain always and go, oh, do I really understand this? Have I properly got to grips with it? Because although AI can do a lot of the tasks that are required, if you haven't had the productive struggle, as it were, like you haven't fully sort of chewed on the meat of that problem, then you're not going to have the same result. You're not going to understand it in the same way.
Yeah, because I think one of the things you say is that it's not authentic wisdom, and we've got to be really aware and careful of that.
Yes, totally. Like it's read every book in the library, but it's never walked out the doors. So it can't tell you, if you say this to, I don't know, Mike, who's the senior leader, at 3:00 on a Friday, how's he going to respond? It really depends on you reading that person. I wish I could remember where I saw this, but the idea that there's some skills that AI can help us with. We can kind of stockpile and do things in the background, almost like building our little pile of smart things that we can have help with. But then there's the skills that are in the moment you need to kind of flex with, and it's like, oh, the people in the room look a bit tired, so maybe I'll play a game rather than talk about the next thing. Or I don't know, I need to pitch this to the client, but they look like they're falling asleep, or I guess I'm presenting a lot, so reading people that way, but also reading conversations, reading those little expressions people have. So I think those skills will be extra valuable.
Still very human skills, aren't they? Yeah.
Exactly.
Just sticking on critical thinking, if we're leading a team where we are using whatever AI product that we have to do research for us, to do some of the thinking for us, what are some of the signs that leaders can look for, which are the early red flags where the team's thinking is slipping? Because that's what concerns me a little bit, is if we outsource all the thinking to the AI, we accept what they say as, global truth, this is the world as it is, and then we act on that, then the critical thinking piece actually does lapse, which is what humans need to do. How do I, as a leader, what are some of the early red flags I need to watch out for?
I think what I notice often is when someone hasn't fully sort of processed the information. So if you talk to any teacher currently is going, right, writing essays for homework is pretty much redundant unless you've done like the mapping and stuff. So there's a lot more verbal assessment. So in a workplace, having a conversation with someone about what they've written, going, hey, can you explain this to me, not to test them but to check that they've understood. And so often, like, having a process, as I say to people, you're free to do whatever, make whatever decisions you want to, but if you've got a process to show your thinking, then if the proverbial hits the fan, then, and someone says, well, what were you thinking? What was the process behind this decision? Then you can at least point to something and say, well, we did it because of X, Y, and Z. We were looking at these values or whatever it was. So asking people to explain their thinking about a summary that they've come to. I mean, to be honest, the obvious tell is when you start getting things with the little thing at the bottom that says, would you like me to try that again? Are you happy with that? And I'm sure every leader has had something sent to them with that little, giveaway thing at the bottom that clearly they haven't thought about it. I think as a leader, it's really important to be honest about how you're using it. And it's funny, lots of people ask me, did you use AI in writing the book? And I say yes, because I dictated a lot. It wasn't necessarily to do the writing as such, but I was speaking to a dictation app to get some of those ideas down, or to capture some thinking from workshops and stuff. And so you go, well, I'm not losing anything in that process. It's just making it much more efficient. So that use of AI is very different from, I know some people that literally have said to AI, write a chapter about blah, 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 and put that in a book. And then they go, oh, it wasn't very good. So you're like, well, yeah, because you haven't gone through it. You haven't processed it. So I guess, just asking people how they're using it. There was some crazy stats that I put in the book. I forget the exact number. I think it's 76% of people are using AI, but not being completely transparent about it. So it's really kind of interesting to note. I said to a friend, again, I wish I remember where I first saw this. It's a bit like cosmetic surgery in 90s Hollywood at the moment.
Everyone's having it.
Yeah, but no one's being honest. It's like, oh, hang on, you look different. How did you achieve that? When I used to teach, it was the classic was the student who could, barely string a sentence together in English and yet would produce a really fluent essay. And you're like, something's not right here. So, if you've been in leadership a while, I would say trust your gut, listen to your gut feel. Don't be afraid to ask questions. And I think not demonizing it, you can use it to, like, I often sort of brainstorm stuff. That's not bad. I mean, I'm still looking at it and evaluating and saying, oh, well, yes, this, not that, that's rubbish, and then I'm the one who ruminates on it. So,
I think there will come a time when we'll quite openly put research through, AI or, written in association with AI. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it makes us faster. It does all the research for us. We don't have to spend hours listening to things or reading things and then summarizing it, because the summaries are really great. And I use it a lot for that, which is the research piece. But it's an interesting point you make, and maybe we do need to start, doing that in our writing, is to say, research supplied by AI, and that, because we're all doing it and we don't seem to want to admit that we're doing it. Because even on LinkedIn, when you do a post, it says, rewrite your post, and most of us go, yes. It goes, oh, that looks so much better. I'll choose that.
I must admit, like, I've realized a bit like, say, 20 years ago when I was teaching English, if there was bad punctuation in something, I would get kind of distracted. I'd be like, oh, I kind of I'm not reading it with the same kind of fluency and enjoyment. And I think the same is happening with AI for me. Like, there's certain tells, like when it says, here's the thing, or it's not X, it's Y. And once you see that in a post, I find I kind of switch off a little bit. Like, I don't read it with the same trust. And I was at the cinema. I was watching Wicked for good the other day with my daughter, and I thought it's really interesting when we go to watch a movie at the cinema. You accept that, and you expect that, there's CGI. It's not real. Of course, those monkeys aren't actually flying. And I think a challenge, particularly when it comes to like on our phones and, looking at research or whatever, is we don't know where that line is of what's fabricated and what's real. So if it's like a little AI video, or when it does the research, even, there's a part of my book is just a very short little experiment to make sure that the papers that it's quoting are real. And I've got a little challenge currently, because I've been asked to write lots of articles and blogs, and there's a particular thing about, I think it's 4-year-olds asking 100 questions a day, and then that kind of tails off as they get older. This was something that I saw quoted in a book that I've read from a few years ago, which was referenced to a research paper. But now going back to that, because someone said, oh, what's the original source? We see this bandied around a lot. And it's actually really difficult to track down the original
source.
Stats. Yeah, like who actually did that research? So that's my current thing, and it's for a blog called Critty Kid, which is all about critical thinking, and the owner of the blog and I kind of back and forth going, oh man, even if you are doing all the research and you're checking and you're going through and you're like, oh yeah, this is on this paper, to actually get back to the original source can be incredibly challenging these days, because there's just so much out there. So I think, not beating ourselves up too much, but also just keeping our defensive thinking on, maintaining that hat, particularly when you're hungry, angry, tired, in those emotive states, because I think that's when we're most susceptible to reacting to something or just accepting something as true, when really it's we shouldn't.
Interested to know, and you've got young kids, you just mentioned that, and I've got a young grandson who's just 15, 16 months old at the moment. He's gorgeous. But I'm interested to know what your thoughts are on how the next generation's critical thinking is going to be impacted, because the reality is that he's growing up and he already knows how to swipe on a phone. He already knows how to, he gets into my phone even without my passcode. I don't even know how he does it, but he does, right? So, yeah. So I just wonder how, the impact of AI on this next generation alpha, if we just, talk about the younger generation, how critical thinking is going to be impacted for them, because pretty much AI will do everything for them.
It's something that I think about. I think being scared of it is not helpful, because when you're scared, you don't do great thinking. There's a whole range of things going on here. I've spoken to quite a few teachers at all different ages, and I think if we stick with standardized testing and standardized ways of educating, then there's a real danger in that, because AI can very easily produce very standard stuff. There are some great teachers, schools, institutions out there that are rethinking how education works and what it means to have an education, and putting the thinking first. So I'll give a little shout out to Dr. Peter Ellerton at the University of Queensland Critical Thinking Project, and Deb Brown and some of his colleagues there. They're doing some really good work around helping teachers think, how do I teach thinking? And even something as simple seeming as, here's my idea, here's my belief, here's my opinion, and getting people to map out what are the arguments and what's the evidence that leads us to that conclusion can be an incredibly helpful thing to do. And I was asked last night, actually, with this group in London, they were like, well, how do we keep kids interested when they can just click a button and go do it? Well, and I think finding things that they're interested in, and I think there's going to be more individualized learning, project-based learning on topics that kids are passionate about. So my son is in a wonderful primary extension program, and he's just finished a unit about Percy Jackson, which are books, narrative, fiction around Greek gods, and there's a particular character who's part of that world, but he's learned so much about Greek gods, more than I've ever learned, I think, through this project, because he was excited to learn. And kids, they're curious, they want to learn stuff, they're excited about the world, so it's finding, whether it's cars or gymnastics, or I don't know how the Wicked movie was put together, to go with that one, like finding ways to get them excited about their learning and to help them understand why they're doing certain tasks. For example, writing an essay. Even when I was teaching in London, speak of the devil, one's out here. Even when I was in London years ago teaching English Lit, I'd be like, well, you have to write an essay because the exam board says you have to write an essay. And you go, well, actually, an essay, the function of an essay is to clarify your thinking on a topic, and to clarify what your actual arguments are and whether you have good evidence to support them. And you go, oh, that's quite different than, oh, I need to write 500 words and make sure that it's finished by this deadline and in this font and the right size, which is much more like, do I have to? And so encouraging teachers and kids to think about the purpose behind things, and exploring it together. So but it's, if we stick with very rigid standardized tests, then I'm worried. I'm worried about that.
And then let's fast forward career-wise. We all went to university and essentially became subject matter experts. And we came out and we said, well, I'm the accountant and I'm the lawyer and I'm the teacher and I'm going to be a CEO, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a nurse. And so we were subject matter experts in whatever we chose as a career. So do we now face a future 20 years from now where we don't need to be a subject matter expert because the AI will do that for us, and we simply become the implementers or the generalists in the workplace?
That's an interesting question, isn't it? There's something there about trust. I think, for example, a lawyer, like you pay for a lawyer because you trust them, you trust their professionalism, their knowledge. And I think there will still be a place for that, because we can't be subject matter experts on everything. And what's that thing? A little bit of knowledge can be quite dangerous. Right? Because we think we know. And the number of times someone's sought like legal advice and they go, oh yeah, that's great for America, but it's not true in this country, for example. There is a bit of a missing piece here, because you said that we come out of university and we go, cool, I'm an expert person, professional in this space. But actually the true expertise comes from the kind of boot camp, often in a career trajectory. It's your early 20s when you're just doing that grunt work, over and over. I think of my early teaching career in London as my teaching boot camp. You kind of learn the stuff and you're doing it day in, day out, day in, day out.
It's life, isn't it? It's where we go from coming out in our 20s to our 40s, where we do technically become the subject matter expert in something, but it's a life that happens in between that's still critical.
Yes, and that judgment that you can make in your 40s is usually based on 20 years of experience by that point, if you stayed in the same career. So yes, there is something there that I don't know what the answer is to. Previously, like a senior accountant would get the junior to do the easy tasks to support them to do the harder stuff. And I'm seeing a bit of a pattern here where they go, oh, actually, we don't need as many juniors or legal secretaries or whatever that kind of boot camp space is. So, on the one hand, you might say, well, maybe we'll skip that. Maybe we'll go straight to more being in those more senior roles and making those judgments. But I think, I don't know, there's just something about the knowledge that you gain and the gut feel that you get from, it's pattern recognition. Essentially, you've seen stuff happening, and this has been going on a while. Like a friend of mine was telling me a little while ago, someone in their mid-20s was applying for her role and she's in her mid-40s. She was taking a break for something, and she said, well, he might have all the the knowledge on paper, the qualifications, all this stuff, but he doesn't have the kind of real world experience to take on the kind of the emotional load of leadership. And I'm not saying that you can't be a leader very early on, but it requires a lot of sort of maturity to do it well, I suppose. So we just, yeah, there's something there about, just getting your hands dirty, building that experience, that it will be very interesting to see how that plays out with AI over the next few years.
It'll be fascinating to watch how the balance happens, because I think with everything that's new, you go too far one end, and then you go, oh, I think I've gone too far, and then you pull back, and then you might go too far the other end, and it might take us a while to find that really happy medium where humans and AI interact really, really well together, and there's no loss on either side of, how we live, how we behave, how we think, home, work, and play. But I think it is going to be interesting for us to watch how that balance happens, because it'll happen in our lifetime, because it's happening so fast. And I find all this really fascinating, because we haven't got the balance yet. We're still working on that, but it will happen at some point. I want to flip to a more personal conversation. You write in your book, and you openly share about finding a lump in 2019, and it was a moment that changed your life. If it's okay with you and you're comfortable, I'd love you to share what that week was like for you, because I think a lot of women go through what you went through in that week.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I was one of the lucky ones, in that I found a lump. I knew it was there for a while and was like, oh, but it's probably nothing. I'd been breastfeeding a few years before and thought, oh, it's probably just not that, like something to do with that. But when I went to my GP, her face was like serious, like, oh, wow, we need to get this checked immediately. And she was making the call to get an ultrasound straight away. And I was like, oh, gosh, right, okay. And I forget exactly why, but I had an ultrasound, and they're not allowed to tell you very much, but she recommended a biopsy and a mammogram, and it took a few days to get that appointment. So, and then obviously a few days to kind of have it all processed. So I think often you can get an answer quite quick, but yeah, I had like a week of between the GP's concerned face and the all clear. And look, I would, my friend James, he talks about, I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy, but I'm really glad I got to go through it, because if you could like bottle that feeling of, we all know we're going to die one day, but that almost fear, but motivating fear, I don't know if that's quite the right term, but you suddenly go, wow, what am I doing with my life? Like, is this what I want to be doing? And so it's a real kind of reset. Like, I often think of that week as, imagine I was spinning lots of plates. So I was teaching at what's now UWA College. I was, my kids were in daycare and kindy at the time, so still quite little, and just trying to juggle all the things, wearing a few hats. And it's like I just let everything just crash. And I literally ate cheese and chocolate and drank lots of wine for a week, because I was just like, reverting to all the comfort foods, and lots of crying. But it was a really good moment to go, wow, what am I doing? And years later, I did, Curtin University here in WA has an ignition program, which is all about entrepreneurship. And someone there said about the 4Ds that kind of prompt you to make those big changes. And I think it was like a divorce, disease, death, and displacement, or something like that. All things which sound horrible, but force you to just rethink stuff. A real circuit breaker moment.
And it was for you, because you then quit your job after that, didn't you?
Yes, I quit my job. It was a good time of year to do that. Like, I had to sort of teach out to the end of the semester, but then we were coming into summer, and it was a good time to start experimenting with this idea. So, up until that point, I didn't know a lot about business. I'd worked in my family's business in the pharmacy, but I'd been in teaching and not-for-profits up till that point. And I started doing like posts on Instagram. I thought, oh, I'll make an Instagram account, because I had taught some friends just for free as a bit of fun, in a very nerdy way, some critical thinking stuff that I had found really helpful. And I thought, oh, I want to share this and just see where it goes. And some of them worked in HR, and they were like, this is great. Can you do this for businesses, graduates or senior leaders? People would benefit from this. And I thought, well, give it a try. So yeah, just started posting on Instagram and LinkedIn, got an ABN. I didn't really know how businesses bought training or how it worked, or even if there was a career in that. But yeah, just started kind of sharing thinking and sharing some cool ideas that I thought were good. And there's that flywheel, get the flywheel going, create the momentum around it. Eventually I did some workshops, and then we had COVID, so it kind of delayed everything. But someone took a chance on booking me to come and do a talk for their business, like a lunch and learn. And then from there, like, oh man, the learning curve of going sort of freelance, particularly if you don't have any connections. I had like 20 connections on LinkedIn when I started, and they were all in the UK because I'd never put any effort into it. But you just kind of, go, well, I'll just connect with this person. Hello, you look interesting. Hello, I like what you're doing, and you find your tribe. And yeah, now it's been 6 years, and the book's out, and it just blows my mind, some of the things that I've been able to do since moving into this space. And I'm still learning, still always learning. I remember when a friend of mine said, who have you got your insurance with? And I was like, oh, I need insurance. I literally didn't know. I had a mentor very early on be like, you need an accountant. And I was like, but why? I don't understand, So that's a long time ago now, and I've learned so much. But it's a real, I think running your own business is one of the biggest sort of personal development challenges you set yourself, right?
It absolutely is. Absolutely is.
Yeah.
So, well, congratulations on all of your success with your business and with the book, The Human Edge, available in all good bookstores. Is it online?
Yes.
Is it through Kindle as well?
Yes, it's in Amazon. It's on my website if people want a signed copy. But yeah, now it's available just this week, actually, on Booktopia and Fish Pond and lots of different. Yeah. So very, very easy to find. Yeah.
So we've come to the point in our podcast where we talk about, well, actually, we don't talk. We have 20 questions, and you get to choose a number, and we will ask a question associated against that number, and it's called our Spotlight Shuffle. So pick a number.
Number 4.
Number 4. What leadership quality will matter even more in the next decade?
Critical thinking. I think the human skills, stuff that's previously been soft skills, I suppose. But how to think something through, how to judge whether something's a good or bad idea, and how to read someone's face in the moment. I think things like that, how to present in front of a group, things like that, I think are really, really crucial. Yeah. What's your answer? I'm curious. What do you think will be?
Oh, you turned it around on me.
Oh.
I think I don't disagree with you. I think what we talked about earlier, I think one of the biggest skill sets we'll need is having the curiosity as a leader to know where the right balance is between what the AI can do for us and what the human skill set needs. You gave the example of, I trust a lawyer and that's why I choose you. But it's like that with a lot of functions in our lives, whether it's a lawyer, hairdresser, whether it's an accountant, whether it's a real estate agent, whether it's a doctor, a nurse. It doesn't matter who it is. No matter what profession we go into, we choose people to provide a service back to us because there's a level of trust. And I think as we move down this path, it's leaders having that balance in their organization where they know that, I can outsource all of this thinking to the AI, but the human element still needs to exist in this format because that is what creates the trust for someone to choose our services that we deliver in a particular way. And I'm interested to see how that balance is going to happen. I don't think AI will take all of our jobs. I think our jobs will change, but it's finding that balance and what that looks like, I think, is going to be the interesting piece.
Yeah.
All right, pick another number.
Cool. 17.
17. Okay, here we go. What's one decision you're proud of, even if it wasn't very popular?
Oh, crikey. That is a good question. I suppose, yeah, because I've never led like a big team, so I haven't had to kind of deal with that. I suppose decision that I'm really glad I did. Tell you what, yeah, it wasn't popular with my mum because moving to Australia.
I'll bet it wasn't.
And bless her, she's been very good about not making us feel guilty about being here. But it's funny how I often talk about making decisions that are more reversible and less consequential. So when we moved here, it was literally with a rucksack and knowing, you know, somebody's cousin and somebody's friend from university, and just, you know, we had nowhere to live and all this stuff. I watched a lot of cricket when we first moved here because I had nothing to do, you know. So yeah, it's kind of funny how that's all worked out, and it took probably best part of a year to feel settled, to feel that we'd found our tribe and stuff. But yeah, I think there's something really, it's a good life experience to go through, to move somewhere new. And I'd say particularly to move somewhere where you don't speak the language, which was not the case for us here. But, you know, I've done that in the past as well. I think lots of people would benefit from just being that fish out of water at least once in your life and
Once
see
in
what
your
it feels.
life. I like that.
Yeah.
All right, let's choose another number.
14.
If you could whisper one sentence to your younger self before you took on your first leadership role or any major role, what would it be?
Maybe something about trusting yourself, like back yourself. I spent a lot of time, you know, despite being academically very good at school and stuff, early career, just I didn't realize that there was value in what I was thinking. And I don't feel like I've changed that much over the years. And yet people listen to me these days. Not my kids, obviously. No, they're good. But you know, people want to know what I think and talk to me about stuff and talk things through. So yeah. How about yourself? What's your answer for that one? That's an interesting one.
What would I whisper to my younger self? It all works out in the end. You know, I think life will throw all sorts of shit at you. You know, they're going to be good days and bad days, but at the end of the day, it actually does work out. I think, you know, I'm an internal optimist. That's probably one of my faults and advantages that I have. My glass is always overflowing and brimming with optimism. But I always say, you know, the sun comes up, your feet will hit the ground, and the day will move on. And you have no choice but really to do the same thing at the end of the day, you know. So yeah. All right, one last question for you.
Number 7.
Number 7. What's the hardest part of leadership that you believe no one talks about enough?
I feel like there's an emotional load that comes with it that, in my experience anyway, that isn't, yeah, you kind of can get a bit, I feel like when I'm managing someone, I feel like I've got an extra child, if that makes sense.
Yep.
Not in that they're immature or anything, but you've got someone else that you need to care about and remember to ask, you know, how their mum's doing after an operation, or how their weekend was, or whatever. And it's, to me, like, it takes a lot of bandwidth. And I'm sure like not every leader has to do it like that, or they find ways to not let it sort of be a big thing. But I found just needing to not just be across my own projects, but also someone else's work or other people's work, quite challenging. And yeah, and you know, you'll get people come to you, like someone said to me, he had a team of 20, and the number of people that had been in his office crying that week, and you're like, oh god, like you're like sort of in this counselor role. And I found it interesting coming from teaching into, you know, speaking to people in more corporate space, big organizations. There is this funny, almost like parental role that people want work to play in their lives. And I don't know how comfortable I feel about that. You know, like, oh, we need to provide healthy food, and we need to, you know, have the employee assistance program so people can go and get counseling, and we need to make sure there's a gym on site, or that they're moving. And you're like, hang on, where does our responsibility for ourselves finish, and where does the work's responsibility start? And obviously there's benefits to a well-slept, well-looked after human being in terms of how productive they're being. But yeah, I think it's a real challenge for leaders that there's this weird expectation to be everything to that person because we spend so long at work. Yeah. How about yourself? What's your answer for that one?
I agree with you. I think, you know, particularly today in this environment right now, leadership is changing so much. Expectations of leaders is changing so much. We have so many generations in the workplace. So we still have some boomers in the workplace, and then you've got, like almost 5 generations, and they all want something different from you. So we've gone from a workplace where everybody turned up at 8:30, they worked through to whatever time, they did their job behind their desk at their chair. This is what we did from a workplace culture perspective. This is what we did for fun. This is what we did for training. And it was the same one size fits all, really, at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But today we're working in a world where we've got a multi-generational workplace, and everybody wants something different from us as a leader and as an organization. How they feel about us, how they want to interact with us, what they want from us it's all very different. And, when you're managing large teams, and maybe even global teams, and all of these things have an impact on the leader themselves. And I think I really believe that boards and directors need to really put a lot more effort to make sure that the well-being of their leader is actually a top priority. So how do we support them? How do we give them the space to have the clarity? How do we send them away for a week at a health farm or whatever that looks like, because I think unless you look after that person at the top who's leading your organization and is being faced with all of these changes and expectations that they have to meet, we're going to see some breakdowns happen along the way, because it's very different. Like, I was talking about this with one of my board members a couple of days ago. We were both saying that, how we led in 2019, 2018 versus how we lead today is so very different. And those changes have happened rapidly. And if we're still leading in the way we led in 2019 in organizations, it's just not going to work anymore, So I think there you go. That's my answer on that.
Yeah, I love that. And like updating our beliefs to match what's actually happening in the world, because we've all got stuff where we're like, oh, I just wish it was like, I don't know, 2010 or something. Like,
no, take me back to 2010. That would be wonderful. But then thank you so much for joining us on Future Fit Leadership. All the best with your book, The Human Edge. Great reading, and I think some really powerful insights on that clarity and judgment and courage that is needed more than ever before. Congratulations on that, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
If you like what you've heard, please share, rate and review this podcast, and don't forget to share it with anyone who might benefit from hearing it. The producer of Future Fit Leadership is Maritza Barone from Guide Your Light Network. If you would like to reach out to me, please DM me on any of my social media platforms. I'm available for speaking at conferences or consulting to your business. Future Fit is created in partnership with Future Leadership, a capability ecosystem for boards and executives. If you'd like to join the community and receive a free takeaway each week, sign up to the Future Exchange app in my show notes. Thank you for having me in your space.
This is a Guide Your Light Network production, creating podcasts with purpose.